Joining me now in the studio to examine what Burnham had to say and what his first moves as Prime Minister might be is 8 News' correspondent Hugo Sugg. Hugo, thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. Now, the new Labour leader set out his priorities. He pledged what he said is the biggest rebalancing of power the country has ever seen. How exactly does he see that happening?
So Andy Burnham was Mayor of Manchester for 9 years. Before that, he was in Parliament. So what he's been able to do is see what it's like being outside of Westminster, outside of London, and what the people on the ground want, what people in the north of England want, some of the most deprived areas in the UK. One of the ways he's going to do that is by this proposition of having a number 10 North. So moving some operations from London, from Westminster, 10 Downing Street, into the north, into Manchester, where he's MP for Makerfield, which is very close by. That comes with its challenges, though. It's very costly. You're moving staff. It also creates some challenges for daily communications. So twice a day, journalists meet with the Prime Minister's spokesman and have what's called a lobby briefing, and then they tell the press what's going on. There's a question about, because all the press are based in London, most of them, how does that lobby briefing have? There's a lot of unknown questions, a lot of unknown answers here. What was pledged in the Labour manifesto as well, in 2024 when they won with 412 seats, was a reorganisation of local government. So there's over 300 councils in the UK, and what they're trying to do is shrink some of those down and have less councils and more devolution. This notion of taking power into local communities, back to councils, having that accountability and that ability to raise taxes and fund their local services in people's communities.
One of the major issues for British people and voters is the cost of life crisis, the inflation. What are the main differences Burnham has hinted to as to how he would handle the crisis?
So Burnham has been quite quiet in terms of how he wants to move the country forward or take the country forward. But one thing I think he's learnt from Starmer, and he mentioned this in his speech today, is he's not just going to tell the country that we're going through a difficult time, things are going to be really tough. That's what Starmer did in his first few months as Prime Minister, while trying to have this narrative of everything's going to get better in time, but it's going to be painful at first. So Burnham's trying to eradicate that and make things more positive, more so people can feel good about what's coming. One thing we don't know, and this is the big question, is who is going to be his Chancellor. So is he going to go for a safe pair of hands like Shabana Mahmood, Wes Streeting, or is he going to go quite radical with Shabana Mahmood, who's currently Home Secretary, who talks, does, and kind of achieves lots of things? Or is he going to go quite safe and calm and try not to upset the markets? The UK markets are very, very unstable, especially since 2022 and the Liz Truss budget. But the cost of living, he also wants to renationalise a lot of things. A couple of days ago, the British Parliament, House of Commons, renationalised British Steel, the steelworks industry, and they want to nationalise Thames Water as well, which is in heavy debt. So one of the things Starmer wants to do is renationalise, which will bring down the bills and bring down the cost of living for people day to day. And we've got the Iran war, we've got the Ukraine crisis. If those get resolved soon, that will bring the cost of food down, the cost of fuel down. Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz is we have lots of issues there with fuel and tankers and being able to transport things in and out of that region. So if that gets resolved, the cost of living will naturally come down in England and hopefully across the world.
We've heard an interesting thing from Burnham today. At one point, he said that the Labour Party will not out-reform the Reform Party. What could he have been referring to there?
So he's referring to Nigel Farage there. So Nigel Farage, the key Brexit campaigner and the leader of Reform, who stood down a week ago as MP for Clacton after some interesting donations to him and his party. So what Starmer did was very much talk about how are we going to beat Reform in the polls, and the polls are currently 350 polls have had Reform as number one kind of party. If there was a general election tomorrow, the polls suggest Reform would win. So Starmer was very much trying to hate Reform and trying to say Reform is far right and racist and, you know, not good for the country. What Burnham wants to do is bring it back to the Labour Party. And he said in his speech today that Labour would now be boldly, confidently us, rather than adopting other parties' politics. So he wants to bring the Labour Party into its own image once again. And he very much said from the 80s where, the 90s where Labour leader Neil Kinnock was there, Kinnock did a lot of change and made Labour what it is today, got rid of the far left factions, and Burnham wants to model that. And he actually, Kinnock was in the audience today and he actually thanked Kinnock for his work in helping him get into politics. So Burnham doesn't want to have a repeat of what Starmer did, which actually didn't help the Labour Party. It just almost made Reform more appealing to a lot of voters. I think what Starmer was trying to do was out-reform Reform and adopt some of their policies and go, well, they're racist, but they have some good policies, so we're going to adopt them and make them ours. And Shabana Mahmood has been doing that on immigration. But I think Burnham wants to bring that back and say, actually, no, the Labour Party is Labour, and we are here to exist for the working class, for the, you know, the people in poverty, for those communities that have been, quote unquote, left behind. So we wait to see. We wait to see if Burnham actually sticks to that promise, or whether the nature of British politics, which is very, very fractious at the moment, whether that pulls him into different parties' politics.
What we did not hear much about today was foreign policy. However, Burnham addressed voters recently, speaking on the war in Gaza. He said the party got it wrong at the beginning of the conflict, and he pledged a tougher stance on Israel. How important has that issue become within British society? Why did he feel the need to address that?
The Israel-Gaza conflict has been seismic in the UK. So since it started, every Saturday for a couple of years, we saw marches on the streets of London every Saturday, and huge crowds, pro-Palestinian crowds. You had Israeli participants as well. There was a lot of fracas. There was a lot of kind of disagreement and police having to get involved. So there was a lot of kind of, it split the country into two. You adopt either a pro-Palestinian position or you adopt a pro-Israeli position. And that has caused a lot of issues, both in society. You've had a lot of campus protests as well, so people camping out into, students camping out into university buildings and taking them over. You've had marches, as I say, but when it comes to politics, the official UK government policy is for a two-state solution. So Palestine to exist and Israel to exist. A lot of the pro-Palestinians don't agree with that. A lot of the pro-Israelis say, oh, is that going to work? How does that work? But in terms of politics, what has really happened was in the 2024 general election, there was a lot of pro-Gaza candidates who stood against Labour MPs, including the former Health Secretary and potential Labour leader, Wes Streeting. He was about 800 votes ahead of the pro-Gaza independent in his seat in London. At 2024, we had 6 Gaza independent MPs. So they don't have a party. They're not a Conservative, they're not a Labour, they're not a Green, they're not Reform. They're independent pro-Gaza. And that scared the Labour Party, excuse me, that scared the Green Party, that scared a lot of the left, because suddenly there is this rise of popularity for pro-Palestinian parliamentarians. So we wait to see. Obviously, the Gaza war is still happening and going on. So we wait to see if a resolution comes of that. We wait to see what that does to the politics.
It will be very interesting to see what Burnham means when he says tougher stance. Hugo, thank you so much for joining me in the studio and breaking this down.